Another fine day for India in this Boxing Day Test match at the MCG. You can say it now, even though strange things have happened already in this series with India's batting, that they are on the cusp of victory. You'd think so after a session that saw India's bowlers break the back of Australia's batting. They've got six of their best batsmen out, and but for a partnership between Cameron Green and Pat Cummins of 34, Australia would have still been trailing at stumps on day three. As it turns out, the lead is just 4 wickets in hand on ESPN Cricket for Matchday. Mike Hussey joins us from Melbourne. Akash Chopra is with me in the slightly warmer winter in Mumbai. And I'll start with you, Akash, because I think it'll be a pretty pleasing day for India. This has gone pretty much as per script and exactly how they would have wanted.
Absolutely, and this is how actually you try and seize control of a test match, Ronak. When you lose the toss, you're asked to bowl first. You bowl well. You dismiss the opposition for less than 200, which is a fantastic return. If there was some assistance on the surface, they utilized it to the fullest and also took their catches. And then it's the turn to bat it the entire day. They could have easily see if you had lost say 3 or 4 wickets last night. And all the advantage that they had, they could have easily squandered it, and then they had to bat last. But they did not do that either. And now this morning, once again, you could be all out for adding another 5-10 runs. India batted a session, added 49. It's not like a lot of runs, but enough to take you to 130. And then just keep squeezing the opposition. This is a near perfect test match from India's perspective. Batsmen, bowlers, captaincy, fielding, everything has come together quite nicely, keeping in mind that it was quite an annihilation in the previous test match last innings. That was fresh in our memories, and we have lost Kohli, we've lost Mohammad Shami. So in that respect, has done wonders.
Yeah, complete control, like Akash says. Now, they put on just 49 this morning, Huss, and were bowled out in 23.4 overs in the first session. Tim Payne said at the start of this day, we can keep India to less than 150 and then look to post 350 in the second innings. We all kind of went, okay, 350 from this Australian batting. And after 2 sessions of play, you could see why. It's been another particularly disappointing batting effort from Australia.
Yeah, without doubt. I thought coming into the test match, Ajinkya Rahane made an interesting point. He said that we've actually played a lot of good cricket. We've only played poorly for one session. And yes, Australia won the first test match in Adelaide, but the batting did look shaky, it has to be said. It was only that they bowled India out for 36 in the second innings that made everything okay. So coming into this test match, all out 195 in the first innings, batting still looking shaky. It's a long way, I guess, to making 350 or even 400 to set yourself up to try and win the test match. They needed to do a lot of hard work. There's a lot of talk about Joe Burns' place in the team. Matthew Wade, this is only the second time he's ever opened in first-class cricket in any first-class game. So, it's not easy for him. I thought he equipped himself pretty well. Steve Smith's the big one. We're so used to seeing him score so many runs. But India have got a very good plan to him. They're bowling a lot straighter. They're blocking up his runs on the leg side. He doesn't feel confident sort of flicking those runs through the leg side because he's worried about getting caught in one of those close-in leg side field positions. And they're attacking the stumps. And he's human. He can get LBW. He can get bowled. Bumrah just needed a tiny little whisker of that leg stump, to get him out. So not having Warner there is also a big loss for Australia as well. We've been so used to relying on the likes of Warner and Smith over the years to score the bulk of the runs and other guys chipping in. Well, suddenly Smith's struggling for runs. Warner's not even there. Labuschagne's sort of hanging in there. He doesn't look in great touch at the moment, and the rest is all a bit shaky. So, the Aussies have been pretty disappointed where they sit, obviously.
Now let's focus just on that. For those of us that watched Smith in 2014 and we just saw him bat and bat and bat and bat and bat, and this never happens. Everyone tries to get his leg stumped, and he ends up getting 1,000,000 runs in the process. What's going on with Steve Smith? Scores of 1, 0, and 8. We don't think this is possible, and now even these little margins aren't going for him. What's happening with Steve Smith?
Well, he's human to start with. But what I believe is when you're batting at your best, you've got nothing in your mind. You're just clear-minded. And he even has spoken about it, getting in this little bubble and just nothing can penetrate that bubble, and he's just batting away and nothing's bothering him. Last summer, when the New Zealanders were here, Neil Wagner and co just bounced the living daylights out of Steve Smith and made him look very uncomfortable, got him out a number of times, and it just put a little bit of doubt in his mind. How do I play this? How do I score runs? How do I get through this tough situation? We all thought, it's okay, Steve Smith will work it out. It's just a one-off. Suddenly the Indians have come here and they've changed their tactics. They're bowling straighter. They're cutting off his runs on the leg side. They're testing him out with a few bounces as well. Ashwin's got him out a couple of times. So there's doubts in his mind facing Ashwin, facing Bumrah. And his mind doesn't seem clear at the moment. He doesn't seem like he's just in that batting bubble where everything's just flowing along easily. And so, it's part of the journey, I guess. Any time you have a longevity in the game and playing a lot of test matches, you're going to have these patches where things go well and then things go poorly. And the great players find a way to work their way through them. And I have no doubt Steve Smith will work his way through this eventually.
Now, Akash, when he went through that slightly, you could say, below average IPL for Smith standards, then came the limited over series. He found his hands, and we thought this is setting Smith up for an ominous summer. What's changed?
Honestly, it's difficult to actually point a finger at something that must have changed. A little more spice on the surface. That's definitely one thing that excites the bowlers, and you have a little more purchase of the surface to at least neutralize some amount of threat early doors. See, he's a quality player. He's one of the modern greats, and he will get through this phase. And it's that one innings where he gets to 25, then he'll be like the same unstoppable Smith, and we'll all be searching for answers. But if there is spice on the surface, there is no opening partnership whatsoever. He's walking in very early, and Ashwin got him out on a couple of occasions. So just not falling in place for him. And fortunately for India, that whatever they are planning, it's working out all right, because it's all great said and done that you can have that leg trap, and with that leg trap doesn't always work that beautifully. It does play on your mind, but it's always fraught with danger, because if you keep going straight so early for too long, then that outside edge possibility becomes almost negligible, because the batsman is already set. Now you can't really go wide and think that you will get rid of Steve Smith. So India's plans have worked, but then it's just one of those things that a great batsman is going through. Fortunately for India, that it's just this time now.
Now, let's assume nothing extraordinary or dramatic happens like we saw in Adelaide. And let's assume the next time we speak to Michael Hussey that India would have leveled this series, which sets up the next two tests well. In which case, perhaps a detailed discussion on Australia's batting is warranted us. They're missing effectively just one first-team player in David Warner, who would make a difference, a big difference, no doubt. But in the absence of Warner, looking at this batting lineup, there will be serious questions asked. So what are the answers to them? Is it a question of looking beyond a few names? Is it about new personnel? What have you made on Australia's poor batting effort now, 3 times this series?
Well, firstly, I'd say don't get too cocky over there, Ronak. The Aussies will be thinking all we need is a lead of about 40 or 50, and we've got a good chance of going 2-0 up. So just don't get ahead of yourself.
I preface this by saying nothing extraordinary will happen. We're going to assume that.
No, but you're right. There'll have to be some serious discussions now about the Australian order. I must admit, I was surprised that they did pick Joe Burns and show faith in him at the start of the summer. And the reason why I say that is he had a number of Sheffield Shield matches in the first-class system for Queensland, and also those 2 Australia A games against India in the lead-up to the series, and he's averaging less than 7. Obviously not a great start at all, but they showed a lot of faith in him. He got that 50 not out in the second innings. But the pressure was a little bit off. That's to say, and I'm not going to say completely off, because there's always pressure in Test match cricket. So I think there's going to be a lot of discussion about his place. They'll be desperate to get David Warner back at the top of the order. And then the question is, okay, well, do they stick with Matthew Wade at the top? He's equipped himself pretty well, but he's not a natural opener. He's more suited to batting down the order. The other player they've got waiting in the squad is Marcus Harris. He's performed brilliantly for Victoria in the Sheffield Shield competition. He's got a double 100 to his name already. He's also played against this Indian, or a lot of this Indian attack in the past, and I thought played pretty well a couple of years ago. Got a number of good starts. The problem for him is they've been stuck in this bubble where there's been having no match practice whatsoever in the last few weeks. So, it'll be a tough ask asking someone to come straight out of a bit of net practice into the Test match arena against this top quality Indian attack. But that could be an option. They could go for Marcus Harris and bring him into the team, which might allow someone like Wade to go back down the order, and then he can make a decision over Matthew Wade or Travis Head. Probably lean towards Wade keeping his place in the middle order there.
It would have been interesting to know what would have happened had a Will Pucovski been available, had David Warner been available, who would have come in, Akash. But just look at this from a point of view, from the opposition. India fancy their chances here. And even if they do persist with the likes of Wade, Head, even the middle order, you think they would in the next two tests. Would you, if you were looking at objectively, look to change things around, or is it just a question of the same batsman getting it right?
Honestly, when you talk about the Indian bowling and how they're going to view this Australian batting lineup, you just a cursory look, you see some holes, and these are glaring holes. So even with David Warner coming in, and he's not played cricket. Once again, it's the same story. Like Rohit Sharma has not played cricket. We just spoke about Marcus Harris hasn't played cricket. Same is the case with David Warner. So don't expect even David Warner, the quality of his batsmanship to just come to the fore immediately, hit the ground running. It's easier said than done. So Indian bowling attack obviously is going to fancy their chances quite a bit. Or whether Wade is opening or not opening, if Joe Burns is playing or Marcus Harris comes in, there are gaping holes. So you talk about this batting lineup. There is Steve Smith who's struggling. Of course, law of averages might just catch up. Manas Labuschagne, who was touted to be the next Steve Smith and was supposed to score a lot of runs, he's looked uncomfortable against pace and against spin. So this Indian team, once they win this test match, hopefully they will. And lightning doesn't strike twice at the same place, if that's the phrase, if I remember correctly. So hopefully, Mike, we'll go to Sydney with the series squared at 1-1 and then all to play for. And from India's perspective, this is not just a test match win. It's not just about the series. It's also about an eye on the World Test Championship qualification, because Pakistan is going to lose to New Zealand first test, maybe the second test as well. And if India didn't win here, then reaching the finals would have been in jeopardy.
Yeah, I mean, they're already drying up those. They stopped watering those pitches in Ahmedabad and Chennai anyway. Akash. Don't worry about it. The England series will take care of that. Now, on a very serious note, though, if we have to continue the conversation on day 3, the other element that needs to be spoken of is India managing to rock Australia's batting in spite of losing one of their strike bowlers. We know that Umesh Yadav has gone for scans on his calf, and we'll know later today how bad that is. But again, goes to show, Akash, in the absence of Umesh, the debutant fast bowler Siraj continues to have an impact. Jadeja, who had a lot more to do in this innings than the first, has also put his hand up.
See, that's the thing. No, hindsight is perfect vision. Now, when you look back at the decision of playing as many as 5 bowlers, 2 spinners, it all just falls in place so beautifully that there is a bowler who's just walked off. Imagine if there was no Ravindra Jadeja, you're down to 3 bowlers. Maybe Steve Smith gets a start, and then who knows? We would still be chasing a huge target. So that's how things change. But having Jadeja there, having that 5th bowler in the ranks, Mohammad Siraj has bowled really well. He's filled in the shoes beautifully. That also must be said that Umesh was brilliant to begin with this morning, in this afternoon, that afternoon session where he dismissed Joe Burns. That was a peach of a delivery. And when you lose him there, you do feel the setback, because even though you do have 2 spinners, but you also want to, on these surfaces, attack continuously with a lot of pace. At least one end is taken care of by pace, and then you can attack with the spinners and rotate them from the other end. Your strategy goes for a little bit of a toss if you're a bowler short, but still, it's having 4 at your disposal as opposed to 3 is a lot better. So Rahane, once again, so you pay, see, you reap rewards of your decisions that you make. And he played 5 bowlers. He's made the right kind of bowling changes as well. And that one DRS call, that the referral that he took where everybody else was slightly underconfident, it has been Rahane's test match so far.
Yeah, I wonder what you make of that, Huss, because call them 50-50 calls, call them gambles, call them uncertain calls, everything that India have done, from changing the position at the top of the order, 2 debutants in Gill and Siraj, playing Jadeja at the expense of what you think is a proper batsman or a full-fledged batsman, everything pretty much seems to have worked. What does that tell you about the response from Adelaide of this Indian team?
It's been an excellent response, I must admit. I felt as though coming into this test, wow, 4 big changes. That's a lot to be making after, as Rahane rightly said, India played pretty well in that first test. They just had one bad hour or one bad 90 minutes and it was all over. But they've pulled the right reins. They really have. I think Shubman Gill, what a classy player. There's a player here for the next 10 years for India. He looks classical and maybe he should have played the first test in the first place. Losing Mohammad Shami, I thought, well, wow, that's going to really hurt India big time. But Siraj has come in and as Akash rightly says, he's done a very good job, stepped in like he's been playing Test cricket for a number of years, built pressure and done a fantastic job. I think they were worried about the batting a little bit. obviously after getting bowled out for 36, but also taking Kohli out of that batting lineup really does weaken things. So that's probably why they decided to bring in Rishabh Pant ahead of Saha, because he can give a little bit of that positive impetus with the bat. So they've pulled the right reins, no question. Australia have sort of gone the other way and shown faith and just stuck fat with who they sort of trust. But after this result, if it goes the way it looks like going, it'll be interesting to see if they hold their nerve or they show some courage and make some hard calls as well.
All right. Now, about a couple of bowlers too. We knew it would be a big test for Bumrah in the absence of Shami, the absence of Ishan to lead this attack. But I want to focus a little bit on R. Ashwin here. It's only one test, Akash. Of course, we shouldn't get too carried away, but there seems to be a different R. Ashwin, not one who's tapering off after one good performance overseas. He seems to be in the thick of things. I don't know if the change in captaincy is helping him in any way, because you know that he's been in and out in under Kohli's captaincy, especially overseas as the lone spinner. What have you made of the resurgence of R. Ashwin as a premier attacking option in this series?
No, he's bowled well, and he's bowled well under Kohli at Adelaide as well. We tend to forget the last test match, but it was the second day where Ashwin came and Ashwin bowled, and he actually maintained that tight leash throughout. So he's been bowling well. It's not that he's not been bowling well. It's just that here, of course, the early introduction of spin on day one, first session, that's where he actually picked up a couple of crucial wickets. And you are all of us are actually product of our the confidence that we have in our abilities at that point in time. In other words, it's called form. So when your confidence is up, your form is there, you do a lot of things right, you experiment a little more as a bowler, and then you feel in complete control that you are calling the shots, you are in control of the proceedings. And then the quality or the experience of taking 350 test wickets in double quick time, that is always going to be that bank of experience that you can draw from. And a fourth tour to Australia, so that's another thing that you've learned a lot from all the previous tours. And suddenly, and the fact that the Kookaburra ball, which was a bit of a problem in the past, is no longer the case, because now you also know how to work around it. And last but not the least, the quality of batting, the skills against spin. That's something that must always be questioned or must not be forgotten, because there is a way to play spin. And a lot of Australian batsmen, they just have no clue at this point in time. They're picking the wrong length. They're not confident enough in terms of their defensive techniques either.
Yes, Huss. One point I'd like to make, which just been watching closely. In Australia, we're brought up, when we face our off spinners, we've been the spinners are taught to toss the ball up, get it wide of off stump, encourage the right-hand batsman to hit through cover against the spin. And you know, the typical one is Nathan Lyon. But all of this at the off spinners, they try and do that, and that's how we're brought up, facing the off spin bowling as well. Suddenly, Ashwin comes, and he's a different type of bowler. He changes everything. He uses a little bit of drift. He sort of cuts down the side of the ball sometimes. He'll every now and then toss one up. But he bowls his line a lot straighter than what Nathan Lyon does generally. And he's got those fielders in on the leg side, the short leg, the leg slip and the like. And I don't think the Australian batsmen are used to facing that type of off-spin bowling. They're used to guys trying to get them out bowled through the gate. So they haven't really adjusted that well to Ashwin's style of bowling, his off-spinners. So I found that quite interesting so far in the series.
All right, good point made. They don't face the likes of Ashwin. It's a different Ashwin on his fourth tour to Australia. It picked up the wicket of Labuschagne. Could have had a late wicket had Rishabh Pant held on to one, but Rishabh Pant did hold on to one of Tim Paine, though there was some debate on whether that one should have been given out, as it turns out. It's been a tale of two innings between Tim Paine and Paul Wilson, the third umpire. Now, Huss, your colleagues on Fox, they weren't pretty pleased with the decision, as it turns out. I wonder what you made out of it. I'll come to Akash as well. From everything that you have seen, was that out?
Well, I'm actually not 100% sure, to be honest. I felt as though the Fox commentators, they made some good points. It could have totally been the spikes scraping along at the exact right timing. But if you look at Tim Paine's reaction, he looked a little guilty. As soon as the appeal started, he put his head down, he tried to scratch centre, just to try and make himself look as though he didn't hit the ball. So I'm not really 100% sure. I think it could have gone either way. There was just definitely a little bit of mark. I felt as though the back foot was still. That's the one that's closest to the stump mic. It could have maybe made a scratching noise, but it was still. The front foot was definitely moving. But could the stump mic have picked up any sort of scratching from that far away? I'm not 100% sure. So if I had to make a clutch call, my gut feeling is he might have just got the faintest of feathers on that ball.
I like that this has become an assessment of cricketers' body language assessment or reading what it is. Because I know what Warnie was saying about Rishabh Pant's body language. He didn't seem sure. Rahane was sure for all money. He didn't even bother checking with anyone. So you can look at who you wanted to make your case. And we do know that there is a case of perhaps whether Snicko can pick up or RTS picks up those noises of the foot. We don't know. I don't know if you've seen Simon Toffel's explanation of it on 7 Akash. He's made an interesting observation too on how he thinks the umpire got it right. So Huss says it looked like the faintest of tickles, so perhaps the right call made. What about you?
I think again I'll agree with what Huss has just said, and you go with the evidence that's presented to you. And the spike is also what Simon Toffel also said, that at what time the spike comes, it's very critical, because that's when you know it's the bat or it is something else. With regards to the placement of the ball, opposed to or in context with where the bat is. So when the evidence presents itself and there is some spike, now don't get fooled by what you see on hotspot, because that's not picking the minor, the thin edges. It is not picking the feathers. So if it is not going to be conclusive, just forget about it as if you've not seen it at all, because that colors your opinion, and suddenly you start asking questions that I did not see anything on hotspot. So what? Because it doesn't matter. Because it's not designed to pick those feathers, and if there is a spike, that's now the standard operating procedure. That if there is a spike at this point in time, third umpires are also being taught with the same coaching manual for the umpires, that how to decipher where the voices come from. If it is just past the bat, that is when it is the bat. So that's it. Then you go with it and you overturn the decision. So I think it was out, because Snicko will take precedence over hotspot any day.
Yeah, that is the protocol. RTS does trump hotspot, which isn't used in every series in the world, and you know why. You can also read up on that on ESPN Cricinfo if you have any doubts at all. And I'll just end this on probably asking both of you, maybe Huss first, whether Tim Paine would have been more shocked at being given not out by the third umpire in the run out in the first innings, or more shocked at being given out by the third umpire in the second innings. Huss?
Yeah, well, he did look a bit disappointed afterwards. I don't know. Only he's going to be able to look himself in the mirror and say whether he nicked that one today or not. I thought, maybe he got a little bit lucky in the first innings, to be honest. It was a 50-50 call. Could have gone either way, depending on which coloured glasses you've got on. But I felt as though he had his bat on the line in the first innings as well. So these things, it's 50-50 calls. Could go either way. But you just hope it evens itself up over the course of a series or a career.
Oh, it's evened up in the course of a test match for Tim Paine. It should also perhaps settle whatever these conversations are about. Let's get the neutral umpires to start traveling and quarantining too. Because that became a point of contention after the first innings, Akash?
It did, yes, because Jason Holder made that point, and it's a relevant point. If elite athletes are actually traveling the world, they're staying in these bio bubbles, and we all know that it's not easy. There is a bubble fatigue. You get tired beyond a point, and it is real. It affects you mentally. So if elite athletes are doing it, then might as well the umpires also travel, because in the end, what do you want? You want just the credibility. I'm not saying anybody's making mistakes on purpose. We all want to make the right decisions. That's the assumption with which we start. So no umpire worth his salt is going to actually favor one team or the other based on his nationality, because his own job is on the line, his reputation is on the line, and that supersedes everything else that may have happened around him. So it's only the credibility that gets questioned because of a certain nationality of a certain umpire. And if that can be avoided, why not? If athletes can go through these quarantine protocols and bio bubble restrictions, then everybody is in the same boat, because this might just be there for a few more months, or maybe a year for all we know. So once that's the case, let's get used to it.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing against the individual umpire. You'd think that a neutral umpire might very well have reached the exact same conclusions. It just keeps everybody at home quiet on at least one point. Okay, that's pretty much a wrap. Let's assume that Mike Hussey doesn't have lightning strike twice at Melbourne, and this is a formality on day 4. We'll pick up a conversation with Huss as we go forward to the next test. Huss, thank you very much. So too to Akash Chopra. Australia just 2 ahead. We'll see how things pan out on the first session of play on day 4. depending on how things go, we'll of course catch you on ESPN Ricken for match day. If this test match does go on till tea, that's when our first live show is scheduled. If things get over before that, we'll be live and look back at what would have been a fine response by India after Adelaide.